Hey everybody, we are back and we are about to go live with Actions as we speak. As you can see, the speakers are just getting ready. The streams are about to start. We have a pretty good turnout of those that have not only looked into the Assange and Manning issue, but are willing to take action against it. I can already tell that my frame rate sucks. Why is this happening? Let's see. No, I don't want to mute my microphone. I guess we're just going to go with this quality for at least a little while, guys, and then we'll flip back to it. I was wishing that we had the quality we did before, but we're just going to roll with it. We're going to try to reconnect. We're going to come right back. And still kind of choppy, guys. Good, how are you?
Hey, thanks. Sure. What, is there an organization that you guys are with?
Yeah, we are Action4Assange.
Okay.
We hold a weekly live vigil for Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, and other whistleblowers.
Yeah.
So this is the week of Julian Assange's extradition hearing, and we crowdfunded one of our co-hosts to London to the trial to give on-the-ground coverage, and we're in the DC area where we only
Before we gear up here, I could tell you, and you could tell me why the three of you are here today. Anybody can start.
Sure, yeah, no, we're here. I'm coming out from the Denver Action4Assange group, and so we're here outside of the prison today to protest the incarceration of Chelsea Manning and Jeremy Hammer, who are basically in here now for standing up for their principles, refusing to testify in a grand jury, a secret grand jury, which is, reminiscent of some darker days and darker...
Certainly not American.
Yes,
certainly not Americana.
Not our values. And, out here to say especially, thank you to Chelsea Manning for her service and what she did. The documents that she leaked to let us know what was actually going on out there. I think that's exactly what we do expect of our servicemen. And so I think she's a hero.
No, I agree. And yourself?
Yep, I'm also from Colorado, and I came out here just to show my respect and appreciation for Chelsea and Jeremy, for their courage in standing up for what's right, standing up for Julian Assange. Protesting this grand jury and this investigation and this persecution of Assange. I think it's very valuable. And we saw yesterday an article that spoke about just how much this is throwing a wrench in the proceedings against Assange.
The Manning incarceration?
Yes. Oh no, her objection, her refusal to cooperate with the grand jury.
So you're basically saying that the article was based on the fact that Manning would not perjure herself in order to lie that somehow Julian Assange is a hacktivist. He is the hacker and he aided in all that, when that's a narrative that's just trying to be spun to quelch free speech.
Exactly.
And yourself?
Hi. I'm from New Hampshire, and I've been with Unity for Jay since Julian was gagged at the embassy in 2018.
Okay.
And it's really important to show up for our truth tellers because the government is really great at hiding them away and silencing them. And my friends here basically said everything I said as I came out in court yesterday, the importance of Chelsea resisting the grand jury, because even if she testified and not perjure herself, if she slipped up in any of her testimony, it could have been twisted into some way to a disadvantage.
Well, more than a disadvantage, it'd be a straight lie. I mean, they're trying to base their case on straight lies and intimidation. Because, I was no fan of the Obama administration. However, one of the few things that I felt they did right was commute Chelsea Manning's sentence. and for that to be overturned in what essentially comes down to a spiteful decision by the Trump administration, right? We now know over the past few days, the lawyers have come out and said that Rohrabacher was indeed there on behalf of Assange and for the pardon, and that it wasn't until after his refusal to cooperate in the manner that they wanted that they sicked Grinnell, and who's now this new intel officer on him through this indictment that was then written up. And that's not even mentioning hiring UC Global and the private spies of Sheldon Adelson. All shameful, guys. All shameful. Well, thank you, ladies. I do appreciate it. Well, we're going to be back around in a moment. I'll stop. I'm going to get the rest of the crew. Thank you.
One second, we're waiting for it to connect.
They have no eyesight.
Andrew brought a lot of spray paint.
I gave it away.
No. I was trying to blame the eyesight on the,
Okay. That's right. Well,
yeah.
We could probably just start and just go live on it.
What's wrong with it? What's happening here?
It's just connecting.
Still connecting?
It's on 5G.
Oh, it's that Restream. Restream IO. Those kids with the Restream IO. And again, guys, that is the federal penitentiary that this is all going down. You're looking at it. This is where Chelsea Manning is being kept. Nice little barbed wire right here along this little patch. Kind of probably tough to see with the quality of the camera. Man, I really wish it was going more than the 15 frames a second it is right now. It's killing me. Yeah, dude, our interview before was awesome, but you can see.
It's all that involuntary 5G. It's that super high-speed broadband, you know?
All
The thing
that
that everybody's craving because we all want genetic damage.
I can't wait to get genetically damaged by 5G.
Right, me too.
Oh man, maybe I'll do that second news.
You can see how fast the internet is on 5G, you know?
This is a 4G LTE connection. It's shameful.
Steve's on 5G right now.
Is he?
Are we swapping?
Involuntarily.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to connect, so she might as well be shooting it.
Why don't you just go in and out of airplane mode quick and see if that'll do it?
Yeah, reset the...
Don't reset that. Just in and out of airplane mode. That's my best guess.
Gotta let it.
Oh. So guys, as promised, here we are covering the events. We got speakers over here. Trying to be as technologically savvy as we can. The speeches will be starting shortly. One young lady has come here from university to film the event, journalism student. That's nice. I would love to see some mainstream media here. Probably not going to happen.
We did send press releases out to like every media outlet with a DC address.
And you got a ton of responses, right, Steve?
We sent them out this morning. In hindsight.
Maybe before that.
Maybe a little earlier next time.
No, my phone will be fine. I'm confident.
While we're waiting, let's see, it's sad that so few people that care enough to go to the protest. Larry Davidson, I wish that more people were out here. I will say this, we do have a few members of the Burmist Brigade out here, which is awesome. Even connecting with 3 or 4 people that support my channel, that support truth, that are willing to get on the ground and do activism like this, that's always encouraging. Don't get me wrong. You want to see hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people at protests like this because of the gravity of the situation, because of the enormity of the impact that this decision will have on the rest of our lives via not only getting rid of free speech, but sending a chilling effect to those that would dare question and expose the establishment, the predator class. And it's very troublesome, Larry Davidson, that there are not more people here. It looks like we finally got him live, so here we go, guys.
Alright, we are here at William J. Truesdale Detention Center, Action4Assange. We are here today because Chelsea Manning and Jeremy Hammond are both imprisoned in this detention center.
Yeah, we're coming out as a show of support for both of them because Chelsea's struggle and her principled stance against grand juries is one of the things that's actually helping Julian's defense right now because she's held in contempt of court for not providing information that she had already previously spoken about during her court-martial originally. And instead of taking that original testimony, they're trying to force her to basically to re-say it word for word, or put her in contempt of court again for lying, perjury.
Yeah.
Or just let her sit in jail until she lies about the situation with Julian Assange.
Or they break her.
Yeah, which isn't going to happen. That's
and
not-
she's been very clear that they've already got all of her testimony that is ever going to be got.
Yeah.
That 100% clear on that. It is also written into law that if the judge in her case believes that more time and more fines will break her, he can keep her incarcerated. But if her legal team persuades the judge that's not going to happen, he has to let her out. That's how the law works. What is working in this particular instance is that there's a concerted effort to keep her in prison. This is the re-incarceration.
The third
of Chelsea.
incarceration. Yeah. She spent between 2010 and 2020 77%, so over 7 years in jail for this exact thing. And she also spent over a year in solitary confinement alone. So I think showing up here is as important for people, and supporting Chelsea and Jeremy as well is as important as supporting Julian, because it's all interconnected and built into that same web of corruption that they're fighting against.
And Jeremy Hammond, who was part of the Stratfor leaks, was in a minimum security facility in Oklahoma until November
Yes.
of
He was
last
only
year.
a few months left before being released.
And he was transferred to the exact same facility as Chelsea as the charges against Julian Assange progressed. It's like the intelligence community is trying to get all of the people they already have in the same little spot around this Eastern District of Virginia court. So Andrew's absolutely right. We have to, while we're here, we have to remember that these two individuals are incarcerated here and make some noise about it.
Absolutely.
We want to support the whistleblowers as much as we support the journalists and the publishers who give us this information and do the brave act of putting their lives on the line, essentially, to release this information, to come out and stand up and be the people that say, no, I'm not going to put up with these war crimes, I'm not going to stand for corruption, we are going to expose these things to the public eye. And
the only thing we're missing is the person watching at home right now. Because the only reason we're doing the live streams is because you are not here with us in person. So
no shame on you for that.
But do what you can with what you have, even if it's getting out in your streets today, in your city, and being the noise there for these people.
And for the one or two people who are tasked to watch this show right now, you can be a whistleblower. We need more of you. If it is your job to monitor these streams, we hope you're learning shit. And you can join the community of whistleblowers. We will welcome you. We're stoked for that. So give it a shot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah.
And it looks like right now we're going to transition into some of the mic speaking. And I think they have some prepared speeches and statements. So before we do that, I think I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to Ian Schlackman really quick. and see if I can get him to talk about his political activism and how he
I
got
live in Boulder
started.
Creek, California.
Ian, before they get going, I was wondering if you want to introduce yourself to my audience and how you got involved in political activism.
How I got involved in political activism? Yeah, how much time do you have?
I mean, we just the start, and then we can talk about this case real quick until they start going.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've been a socialist for quite a while, actually, ever since high school, believe it or not. I'm actually here with my socialist comrades today, People's Power Assembly from Baltimore. And what really drove me to it was the idea that capitalism is a mess. It's a disaster. I mean, I don't just, disaster capitalism is in now, it's a thing, but capitalism is always a disaster. It's done that by design. The wealthy keep us separated at each other's throats, and they do that for a very good reason, because they don't want us to be organized, they don't want us to understand our own power, whether it be as workers, whether it be as citizens, whatever you want to think of yourself, we have the power, not the people in charge. But yet, every single day you're told that that's not the case. Every single day you're told that that's not the way it goes.
And the upper echelons are always exercising that power in what I would call illegal, vicious, predatory, and disgusting manners. And this Chelsea Manning case is a great example of that. We actually had somebody who really wasn't guilty of any crimes whatsoever already be in jail and then have their sentence commuted by a president of the United States and have that overturned in this administration. Essentially another type of double jeopardy, which we're supposed to be protected against as citizens, and we obviously don't have that protection even though we're told that.
Look, I think the court system is designed to protect the elite, to put that elite agenda out there as their particular agenda. I don't think it's designed to help workers or working class folks at all. In fact, I was just talking to my comrades over there at People's Power Assembly about the fact that this is a sheriff's office detention center. Up where we are in Baltimore, there's a sheriff's office run detention center where young black men go in and they die. They just kill them, say, oh, another one committed suicide. Look at that. Look what happened. I mean, it's completely insane. And people know it's not true, but because, because they don't really care about what people have to say, everyday working class people, because they could just indiscriminately kill inside black and brown communities. And now you're seeing it done with white communities as well. I mean, this is what they do. I mean, so it's rough out there. It really is. The more we organize, the more we come together, the more we show solidarity, what better strength we'll have. Strength in numbers all the way. Don't let them isolate you. You'll never come out.
All right, Ian, we're going to get to this, but thank you so much, and we're going to come back around. Appreciate it.
Big fan.
Thank you, man. Thank you, brother.
Chelsea Manning released a statement in regards to her grand jury process. So if anyone wants to do it with me, we're going to be passing the mic around, reading her statement paragraph by paragraph, because her struggle is our struggles, and her words are our words in this instance, because she is the one that released the leaks, but we are the ones that still live in the country that hasn't done anything about it yet. So this was from May 28th, 2019. Dear Judge Trenda, during the contentment hearing on May 16th, 2019, this honorable court directed me to take an opportunity during my confinement to reflect on my principles with respect to the institution of grand juries in the United States. This letter is a response to that directive. During the hearing, you stated there exists no dishonor in providing evidence to a grand jury. You suggested that the codification of grand juries in the United States Constitution provided ample justification for this institution. In response to my suggestions of preliminary and committal hearings, you expressed skepticism over whether publicly held hearings served the purpose without damaging innocent people accused of crimes. These arguments are raised frequently in discussions about the problems with grand juries. They are certainly not novel to me. Over the last decade, I frequently considered these and many other arguments while forming my opinions about the grand jury process. I wish to present my position in a more carefully and complete manner that an impromptu congeal can provide. After working with lawyers and researchers, I can also now cite specifically sources that support my position.
I shall compare grand juries in their earliest form, including the ideals and practical problems they sought to address, to grand juries as they currently operate. Second, I want to clarify that while my objection to grand juries emphasizes their historical use against activists, I also view grand juries as an institution that now undermines due process even when used as intended.
The drafters of the U.S. Constitution, despite their many flaws, possessed a sophisticated understanding of modern political theory. The framers did not set out to short-circuit due process protections. Obviously, to a contemporary reader, we now understand the many flaws and compromises in the Constitution and see some as inherently cruel and indefensible. Legal human slavery, the legalizing of subordinate civil status for women, segregation, and the disenfranchisement of those who did not own land come to mind.
Some such practices might have struck contemporaries of the Constitution as normal or necessary, but with the passage of time and through the tireless work of millions of people taking bold and dangerous action, they are now obsolete. I am certainly not alone in thinking that the grand jury process, which at one time acted as an independent body of citizens along the lines of a civilian police review board, slowly transitioned into the unbridled arm of the police and prosecution in ways that run contrary to the grand jury's originally intended purposes. The Fifth Amendment provides many of our most cherished procedural safeguards, concepts foundational to our criminal legal system, including due process, a prohibition on double jeopardy, and the right against compelled self-incrimination. The grand jury is also enshrined in the Fifth Amendment. However, prior to the recent publicity surrounding the Mueller investigation, most Americans only know two things about the grand jury. First, people hear that a grand jury could indict a ham sandwich. Early grand juries acted independently as investigations by citizens. Now the grand jury process means the prosecutor decides what the grand jurors see and what they don't see. The grand jury imagined by the drafters of the Fifth Amendment, which did not involve a prosecutor, bears no resemblance to what we see today, where more than 99.9% of indictments sought are granted. Second, we learn another, more sinister thing about grand juries. They don't indict law enforcement. For example, in Dallas, over a stretch of several years, more than 80 police shootings came before grand juries. Only one returned an indictment. Grand juries have protected police officers since the slave patrols. They were used to indict abolitionists, but not people capturing and re-enslaving people seeking freedom from bondage. They were used to indict Reconstructionists while actively protecting lynch mobs. Both the ham sandwich statement and selective indictment happened because of a grand jury's secrecy. Also, a prosecutor's presentation of a case is shaped by their own ideas and goals. There does not need to be any misconduct or bad intent on the part of a prosecutor to influence the grand jurors in a way that destroys their independence. If you look at legal scholarship about the history of the grand jury, you can see how today's grand juries are unrecognizable from English and early American ones. The original grand jury was more than an investigator. They were supposed to protect citizens not just from unjust indictments, but from unjust laws. In England, grand jurors who even allowed a prosecutor to come into the grand jury room were seen as having violated their oath.
I am positive that the founders never intended the grand jury to function like those we see today. If grand juries were actually independent bodies that nullified unjust laws or their unjust application to determine whether it was really in the public interest to decide who should be made infamous under the law, I would feel differently. Reading the history of grand juries, I have read of how, during the American Revolutionary War, grand jurors refused to indict tax resistors against the crown, because while it was technically illegal, the grand jurors recognized that what made it a criminal act was a law imposed by an authority that most of them by that time did not recognize. Nonetheless, the grand jury once provided a modicum of due process, at least to the class of people to whom due process was made available. In 2019, the federal grand jury exists as a mockery of the institution that once stood against the whims of monarchs. It undermines the Fourth Amendment's protections against the unreasonable search and seizure, and the Fifth Amendment's guarantee guarantees of due process. Today's grand juries do not safeguard such fundamental rights, and they are easily subject to abuse. Secret proceedings lend unearned legitimacy to prosecutorial decisions that protect the powerful against accountability and overpunish the marginalized. It is not surprising that the members of the defense bar are generally unsupportive of grand jury proceedings. Even the Department of Justice released a report that acknowledging that grand juries are notorious for being rubber stamps for the prosecutor for virtually all routine criminal matters. Moreover, because prosecutors can compel people to show up and testify or produce documents to grand jury without having to show probable cause, their unmonitored subpoena power functions to let them sidestep the Fourth Amendment's protections against unreasonable search and seizures. Imagine a world in which you are not a judge and were not connected to judges and prosecutors personally. If you or a loved one has charges brought before a grand jury, charges of which you or they were innocent, would you believe for one moment that the grand jury might not indict? What rights specifically would you consider safeguarded by the Fifth Amendment's provision for a grand jury? Consider that it is more than 6 times as likely that you will be struck by lightning than that a federal grand jury will decline to indict. I object to grand juries even when used in the ways that are typically understood to be legitimate.
The ability of grand juries to be abused and used for political ends is entrenched and perpetuated by the fact that jeopardy doesn't attach with a grand jury. So prosecutors can routinely bring the same changes. Even though there are some laws that say prosecutors must either show they have new evidence or that it is in the public interest to extend or reconvene a grand jury, this is hardly an obstacle. For instance, Thomas Jefferson had to convene 3 separate grand juries in order to indict Aaron Burr for sedition. But he was able to continue to convene those grand juries until he obtained that indictment. Additionally, in the antebellum South, grand juries routinely indicted anti-slavery activists for sedition, while those in the North sometimes refused, but charges were re-presented to new grand juries until they stuck. In 1968, a San Francisco grand jury was asked by Mayor Alioto to investigate the Black Panther Party. They refused, and performing a press conference about political overreach. Unfortunately, in 1969, a new grand jury began an investigation. These examples run to the political, but grand jury shopping is something that can be done with any kind of case. Grand juries can also be used to coerce defendants to give them their trial rights and take pleas, both by threatening to indict for more severe charges than are warranted, which we know can be easily done, or by threatening to call a defendant's loved ones before a grand jury as witnesses. The very threat of the secret proceeding is in itself terrifying to people. The secrecy of grand jury proceedings fuel paranoia and fear, running contrary to our ideals of open courts and stoking our disdain for secret testimony. I find when I explain the secrecy of grand juries, people are often truly shocked that they are constitutional and frequently compare them to the court of Star Chamber. The Star Chamber existed in England from the 15th to 17th centuries. The court lacked the same process as normal courts, and often often pursue political and religious dissidents, and others who sin against the crown. They lack evidentiary standards and proceeded on rumor and hearsay. It imposed all kinds of arbitrary punishments except the death penalty. In 1631, Parliament abolished the Court of Star Chamber as a dangerous relic of the past and as its brutality and capriciousness. The grand jury was once a progressive and protective replacement for things like the Star Chamber. But in the current incarceration, it bears far more resemblance to the court of the Star Chamber than to its intended role as a bulwark against arbitrary state power. Apart from the fact that the grand jury itself does not impose punishments, the biggest difference between the grand jury and the court of the Star Chamber is that the Star Chamber proceedings were in fact largely open to the public. I am not alone in objecting to the grand jury as a dangerous relic that evolved in ways that increased its power without increasing its protections. This is not even a partisan issue. For instance, the Kendall Institute made a statement critical of the grand jury. Prosecutors defended their actions by reminding everyone that legislators have approved the procedures. Legislators defended what they have done by reminding everyone that the court approved the procedures. The judges defended what they have done by reminding everyone that the prosecutors and legislators are free to do otherwise. And the people seem to connect, since they have not revolted against the elected officials who run the system. Citizens, in turn, are too often assume that someone in the government is looking out for their welfare, including their constitutional rights. No one takes responsibility for the fact that constitutional rights are slipping away.
Moreover, in countries of themselves, and simply being investigated does not end in rule.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So it was just the mic? All right. Sorry for the audio, guys.
Okay. Now I want to address my specific current concerns about the ways in which grand juries can be used politically. Across the world and throughout history, it has been common practice to incarcerate or even kill dissidents and political rivals on the mere suspicion of being a member of an opposition group. While in the United States, we are perhaps less overt in our prosecution of dissidents most of the time. The grand jury subpoena, combined with compulsory immunity, gives unrestrained powers to U.S. prosecutors to oppress activists and their communities. Generally, people have no obligation to cooperate with law enforcement investigations, but in the context of a grand jury subpoena, people who refuse to talk about their First Amendment beliefs and associations can be locked away via contempt.
During the McCarthy era, when people were publicly interrogated about their beliefs and associations, the public was eventually outraged, and the McCarthy hearings are widely seen as a disgraceful episode of modern history. This questioning, however, routinely happens under the grand jury system. Due to the secrecy of grand juries, the public is less aware of it and less outraged, and therefore it continues without interruption. However, this is because they are unaware it is happening and cannot feel its effects. The investigative grand jury, as we know it, was developed in the wake of the McCarthy during the Nixon years. It was developed purportedly to battle organized crime, but was promptly used to subpoena members of anti-war groups, women's movements, and black liberation groups. Prosecutors issued subpoenas in conjunction with grants of immunity in order to compel testimony, and routinely had resistant activists imprisoned for contempt. For instance, while federal agencies were investigating the Puerto Rican independence movement, several community organizations refused to comply out of solidarity with their communities. They were arrested at gunpoint for contempt of court. Senator Ted Kennedy was not shy about expressing his alarm. Over the past 4 years, under the present administration, we have witnessed the birth of a new breed of a political animal, the kangaroo jury, spawned in a dark corner of the Department of Justice, nourished by an administration bent on twisting law enforcement to serve its own political ends, a dangerous modern form of Star Chamber secret inquisitions that is trampling the rights of American citizens from coast to coast. The tradition of using political grand juries to jail political dissidents and activists is long. The concept of a grand jury in which prosecutors subpoena activists and jail them for refusing to comply with the subpoena stands in stark contrast to the institution contemplated in the Constitution. The foregoing is intended to give you a better and more nuanced understanding of my conscientious objection to the grand jury. I understand the idea that as a civil contender, I hold the key to my cell, that I can freely hit myself by talking to the grand jury. While I may hold the key to my cell, it is held in the beating heart of all I believe. To retrieve that key and do what you are asking of me, Your Honor, I would have to cut the key out, which would mean killing everything that I hold dear, and the beliefs that have define my path. Each person must make the world we want to live in around us where we stand. I believe in due process, freedom of the press, and a transparent court system. I object to the use of grand juries as tools to tear apart vulnerable communities. I object to this grand jury in particular as an effort to frighten journalists and publishers who serve a crucial public good. I have had these values since I was a child, and I've had years of confinement to reflect on them. For much of that time, I depended for survival on my values, my decisions, and my conscience. I will not abandon them now. Sincerely, Chelsea Manning.
Guys, as you see, they just read that statement from Chelsea Manning on grand juries. I want to apologize for the poor audio. The audio guy was working so hard to get it right, and for it to be the microphone, how would you know? We're going to continue to stream from here. Probably over the next hour or so, and then I am going to head back to the hotel, hopefully give you that interview with Patrick Howley, and then get ready for the First Amendment event tonight over at the Omni Shore Hotel. And hopefully these people are going to be talking about Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange, the illegal extradition, the national counterintelligence document of 2020 to 2022 that goes after leaktivists, hacktivists, and public disclosure organizations. Thumbs this video up on the way out. And remember, guys, this extradition hearing is not over. You can take action tomorrow. You can take action the next day. You can get people together so they can be informed on this issue, and maybe we don't see the death knell of free speech in this country and from around the world. I want to thank all you guys that have financially supported this trip. It's been heavy on the wallet, but that's to be expected. DC is not a cheap place, but you guys that did it for me, thank you so much. If you do want to give, the GoFundMe's link is underneath. Right now, they are continuing to stream over at Action4Assange, so if you want to continue coverage of this event, which is still going on right over here, please just go over to the Action4Assange page and check it out. I will be back later. I love you guys, and I'll see you on the flip.